And joining us right now, our good friend from Inside the Birds Empire, Eagles writer Geoff Mosher joins us. What's up, Mosh?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. It's great to have you. Make sure everyone's following Geoff on Twitter, all social media platforms, as well as checking out InsideTheBirds.com, as well the podcast with our friend Adam Kaplan, breaking down all things Eagles. Nobody's covering the Eagles like you guys are covering the Eagles. First day, training camp, in the books, first little run around. Now I think they get like a month off or something. But no, first day in the books. We learned that, yes, Cam Jurgens is going to get the initial shot at the right guard spot. He'll be running with the ones, was running with the ones, as Nick Sirianni talked about today, and you guys wrote about on InsideTheBirds.com. Right decision, wrong decision, or just right decision for now?
Oh, I mean, yeah, right decision for now. Look, I think Tyler Steen, who they drafted in the third round, maybe if he can adjust to playing the inside, might be more ideal for the job. He's a bigger body. You already have an undersized center. Isaac Seumalo wasn't the biggest guy either, but he was country strong. He was almost stronger than his size. And so Tyler Steen is a guy who if he can make that transition, and they'll see, is going to be a good competitor for this job. But Cam Jurgens, while he is lighter and probably more built for center, he is in year 2. He did cross-train a little at right guard last year before he had to move over to center when Jason Kelce had the elbow procedure, and he is a second-round pick. So there's good reasons to get him the first look as well. And I'm going to add this to the mix. We joked about the schedule. Do they ever practice, right? I don't know how much Jason Kelce is going to practice in camp, right? I mean, they're already scaling back. So I can't imagine Jason Kelce is going to be full go every single day, right? So there's probably going to be a lot of times this camp where Cam Jurgens has to play first-team center. So if he's really getting looked at guard, you got to get him as many opportunities early to get those right guard reps in before he does eventually make that move to center when necessary. That was the plan last year too, but then Jason Kelce had the procedure and he went right to center. So basically I think you got to start off right now and have it done.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk about the guys that are going to be running the football behind that offensive line. Let's talk about DeAndre Swift. Let's talk about Kenny Gainwell. Let's talk about Rashad Penny and those guys. Nick Sirianni said during his opening remarks that you're going to have a running back by committee. Essentially, everyone's going to be getting reps with the ones. In essence, how do you think all this shakes out? Is there going to be a bell cow guy per se, or are we going to have a specialists coming out of the backfield?
Well, I think there's going to be defined roles for these guys, Mark, and I'm positive the coaches just don't know what those roles are yet. They've got to figure them out, right? I mean, first of all, these guys have to stay healthy. Rashad Penny has not been healthy for a long time. DeAndre Swift, same thing. He's not as injury prone as Rashad Penny, but there are certainly injury concerns with DeAndre Swift throughout his career. And then you've got Kenny Gainwell, who's about to have like I think an increased role here, and they're going to find out, can he handle more volume? Trey Sermon, listen, I'm telling you, I know nobody's talking about Trey Sermon, and for good reason right now with all the additions that they made. But there's a reason last year that even though he only carried the ball twice, that he maintained his roster spot while they were doing all that carousel stuff at the end of the year with injuries. I was told the coaches really liked Trey Sermon. They thought he was acclimating well. There just wasn't opportunities to get him on the field for obvious reasons. So you can't just count him out, even with the additions that they've made. So, and then there's Boston Scott, right? So we know roles for what these guys can do. We know they have some pass catchers with DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell. But
is that Boston Scott in the room with you right now? Is he saying, talk more about me? Talk more about me.
What do you mean I'm the last guy on the totem pole? That's my dog. He's a big Boston Scott fan, I guess. But I just think that's what this camp – it's very rare that you have camp these days and you have like real job competitions. Well, we just talked about the one at right guard. That's real. I think running back is a real competition / fact-finding mission for the coaches to see what they've got.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Now, the other thing we can talk about here is your most impactful players going from last year to this year, and biggest additions as well. I know he's a rookie, and I know they're rookies, But you're talking about a guy in Nolan Smith coming off the edge. You're talking about a guy like Jalen Carter in the middle. What are realistic expectations for this brand of Georgia, Bulldog NFL kids coming into the league here?
Yeah. I think Jalen Carter, as long as he comes as advertised, will wind up being in that starting interior and a 5-man front. You'll have theoretically, and the Eagles hope, Jordan Davis in the middle, flanked by Fletcher Cox on one side and Jalen Carter on the other. Obviously, it was Milton Williams on day one because he's been here longer. You're going to get some opportunities to see him. Jalen Carter, they always make rookies kind of earn their stripes. Same thing with Nolan Smith. But whereas Nolan Smith, I think, is going to have to – they're going to have to figure out how and when to use him the best way, not just based on his performance, but also – like, it's hard to have Nolan Smith and Hassan Reddick on the field at the same time because you're pretty light around the edges. I mean, that's certainly not a first or second down type package that you're looking at. So there's a little bit more of a wait and see with Nolan Smith, but Jalen Carter just has to do what a defensive tackle is supposed to do for him to be able to play a lot of snaps. Now, he'll face a little bit of the same issues that Jordan Davis did coming out of Georgia, which is that these guys never played the full games. They're in such a good deep rotation down there that they have to learn what it's like to be on the field 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 snaps in a row at a time. And so that's Jalen Carter. I'm sure that's what training camp is for with Jalen Carter. And I would say that it is a little bit of a slower transition for a defensive tackle into the NFL, as opposed to, say, sometimes wide receivers just come in and hit the ground running, or there are other positions where you can do it. But I think as long as, and we've heard so far that he's been coachable, he's had a good attitude, as long as he's doing what he's supposed to do, he's going to get on the field.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about some of these other position battles that are out there right now, linebacker, I'm seeing people write about linebacker. I think you guys had Andrew DeCecco there as well on the first day of camp, looking at things there. Linebacker seems to be a big thing here. I keep hearing this name, and my audience might already be sick of hearing it. Von Sumeren coming in here and potentially making a roster spot, making the practice squad as a linebacker. The Eagles have certainly gone in the undrafted direction before. What are you making of a guy like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, tell me that Ben Van Sumeren doesn't sound like an 80s WWF wrestler, like the old guys who would just come in and get their asses kicked, right, just to against the bigger name guy.
I'm pretty sure he went up against John McClain at Nakatomi Plaza. I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely, part of the group. But look, I mean, he's an undrafted free agent. I know he tested well athletically. The book on him that we were told was that, for a linebacker, you want to see a little bit better instincts, sharper instincts. So he's got a big gap to bridge. I mean, Nakobe Dean's one of your linebackers. Nick Morrow, very likely the other, unless Christian Ellis can unseat him. If those guys stay healthy, I think that's your 2 to 3 linebackers that are going to play. Just like last year, really all you saw was TJ Edwards, Kaiser White, and occasionally in a blowout or something, Nakobe Dean. But this is also a position where Howie Roseman's probably going to look at around camp, cut down day to see if he can upgrade it going into the year without doing something crazy, like trading for, a big. I know everybody thinks Patrick Queen is on the out with Baltimore because of the moves they made, but I can't see Howie really giving up big draft compensation for a guy who's only got 1 year left and is looking for a contract extension to make a lot of money at a position that they're clearly not going to pay a lot of money at.
Right. I want to ask you about this and go around the league briefly here, just when it comes to these quarterback contracts. Jalen Hurts signs, great deal. Lamar Jackson signs, a little bit more, fine deal for the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Justin Herbert, now he signs his deal. I'm never against the Eagles setting the market, especially in this regard. But when you look at those 3 quarterbacks right there, it's no disrespect to any of them. But if you're asking, and people are going to talk about who's better, I feel like the Eagles, so far in this new era, this new class of quarterback signings, got the best quarterback for the best price.
Well, yeah. And that's why it's smart to do it earlier than later. And that's why it's smart to look at the Carson Wentz situation and say, we can't allow that to influence our thinking and all of a sudden become more risk averse, right? Because it didn't work out the first time. The prices go up by the day. And when Joe Burrow signs his contract extension, it's going to push that number even bigger. So, if you remember, the Dallas Cowboys waited on Dak Prescott. They waited and waited and waited until after his 4th year. They didn't give it to him after his 3rd year, I think, because he had the injury. And then they had to pay the top market money at that time for a quarterback, and that hurts you. You want to be able to pay your quarterback, but also, once the market resets, you want that to actually look like a good deal for both sides, within 3 months of doing it. And I think it worked. It works out for the Eagles, and it works out for Jalen Hurts.
What is the future of the running back position in the NFL? I know everyone's kicking this around. They're talking about money. They're talking about finances. They're talking about Saquon Barkley. They're talking about Saquon Barkley, Geoff, as if he crossed a picket line to go sign his deal with the Giants and show up on time for camp. What is the future here when it comes to the running back position? Money-wise, anything, just the future position?
I don't know, because it was looking like there was going to be some running back revolt, and the Zoom call happens and the airing of the grievances. And then 2 days later, Saquon Barkley winds up signing for $900,000 more than he originally would have made on the tag. That's not exactly a real heavy negotiation iron fist right there. I mean, you basically, I don't want to say paved, but he didn't have leverage to begin with. I don't know. I think that it's hard to predict the long-term ramifications. You could convince me that players would not want to play running back anymore, because where's the money in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but there's not enough money, but there's a whole lot of mileage and body toll. But you'd have a hard time convincing me totally of it, because it's still a glory position. It is still a position that great athletes excel at. And, you have the opportunity now in college to make money through NIL. So it's not like you have to wait till you get to the NFL to make money. And it's not like no running backs ever get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit of a fallacy. I mean, Todd Gurley just a few years ago got a huge contract and then hit decline immediately. There are guys who Nick Chubb did get a contract extension, I believe, with Cleveland. That was pretty good, even though he was on that call. And there was, Christian McCaffrey got paid. So it's not like every single running back doesn't get paid, but it is definitely an issue, and it is definitely intentional. Me thinking that a team that, like the Atlanta Falcons this year drafting Bijan Robinson, or the Giants when they drafted Saquon, that they know that until they get their quarterback and passing game developed, they are going to ride the crap out of their running back for 3 to 4 years on a rookie deal, and then figure out a way to not have to pay that guy, because along those years, they're going to wind up drafting that quarterback, that offensive tackle, that defensive, just like what the Giants have done, right? And they're going to start to gear everything more toward the passing game, to the point where they're not going to pay the running back. So there is an element of unfairness for running backs compared to other spots, where they are used and abused and then not valued. You could have said that about quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who had to play on a rookie deal and be an MVP caliber player, but at least he knows he's going to get paid like he did. The running backs, they don't always know that, and that is probably very unique to their position compared to the other positions in the NFL.
I know I see a lot of people, with the comparison. I don't know if it was NFL Today or whatever it was, or NFL Live rather. I'm still coming off basketball season, NBA today. NFL Live, that put out the stat with, Miles Sanders getting $7.2 million with the Panthers, and the entire stable of Eagles running backs is now about $7.2 million for the upcoming season. It's ridiculous.
Boston Scott is the highest paid Eagles running back. Think about that.
I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like there's going to be a subdivision of the players union. It's just called running backs. And it's just going to be like, all right, well, we're here too, but hopefully we get paid at some point. Yeah. All right. Why, Geoff Mosher, why should I be confident in Sean Desai as the Eagles defensive coordinator?
Why should you be? Well, I feel like you know how we do it inside. I feel like I could give you 5 reasons why you shouldn't.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
why you should not. So
it's like being a comedian. You could argue any side of an argument. It's whichever funnier. Yeah.
There you go. So 5, a couple reasons you should be is because he's done it before, right? So he's been a play caller, as opposed to them trying to fill that position with someone who had not done the job. I think that's a good thing. I will give you another good reason you should be. Most coaches are products of their environment. of who influenced them. When Andy Reid came here, he was bringing basically what he learned from Mike Holmgren and what Mike Holmgren learned from Bill Walsh, and Andy Reid also learning from Bill Walsh. So look at Sean Desai, who he's worked with. I mean, he's worked with Vic Fangio, John Fox, Mel Tucker, Chuck Pagano. So he's been surrounded. Oh, and then in Seattle, he's with Pete Carroll, right? So he's been kind of surrounded and groomed by a lot of really good defensive minds and people who believe in different defensive concepts, but at the end of the day have always put out good defenses. So those are two good reasons I think that you would. And the third I would say is that he's not coming in here and completely changing the front or the scheme the way Jonathan Gannon was from Jim Schwartz, right? You went from a 4-3 wide 9 to a Fangio concept with Jonathan Gannon, and all of a sudden we're talking about certain types of players with the Eagles that we'd never talked about before, like a nose tackle like Jordan Davis, right? Or a man match system that they've never played on the back end. Sean Desai was heavily influenced by Vic Fangio in Chicago, and he's going to run some variation of that Fangio concept that a lot of the players who were here last year, Bradbury, Maddox, Slay, some of the linebackers, N'Kobe Dean, they're familiar with that. So while there are 5 to 6 new starters on defense, and that would gravitate toward why you shouldn't be confident, at least that there's some familiarity in place there.
Last thing for you, Geoff Mosher. When it comes to Jalen Hurts, it's really hard to top what he did last year, other than, of course, win the Super Bowl or maybe win the MVP. But if he's really being, honest with himself, if he's really trying to nitpick at himself and understand what he could do better specifically, is there anything that stuck out to you from last year to this year? You say, okay, this one particular thing, if I'm Jalen Hurts, this is what I worked on for all offseason. Like last year, we talked about reading a defense. We talked about the deep ball, and it looks like he certainly improved upon that. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you want to see in particular for Jalen Hurts, or anything you'll be looking for that he's improved upon from last year to this year?
Yeah, well, I think that, I don't want to say someone has to throw to their running backs or someone has to start checking down, because if you don't need to, you don't need to. But I would think that the way the Eagles were so prolific last year, that they're going to see some different design concepts defensively that are going to try to take away that deep ball, on the back end. And, certain quarterbacks started to reach new levels when they would see it before it happened. And, I don't want to use Tom Brady as an example, but one of the things he did really well was like he knew that based on certain defensive looks he was getting, that those flats were going to be open, right, for his running backs. And it would just snap, bam, throw to James White, snap, bam, throw to Kevin Falk or whoever they had, Ben Jarvis Greenells. They had a bunch of different pass catchers. And I think when you've got DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell and guys who can catch the ball better, then there will be opportunities to move the chains underneath where you can hit those guys early in the route and then give them a chance to make yards after. You've seen some of the better quarterbacks develop that way. And I would say that's something that we didn't have to see a whole lot from last year's offense, is that check down, or that intentional, what I call it, intentional check down, because the running back's going to be open down there.
I'm just going to make that the hot route. Forget about it checking down. You're number one. Go for it.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. But, by the way, are you a fantasy player? Do you play fantasy baseball, fantasy football?
I play fantasy football. That's it. That's all. That's the only fantasy I play.
But how often do us as fantasy players and owners, we draft a player coming off an unbelievable year and we get disappointed because like the next year he's still good, but it's like significantly less production, right? That's the challenge for Jalen Hurts, because there's only like a small percentage of players in the league that give you that kind of production every year after year. And I'm talking even good player. I mean, there are some really good running backs and good wide receivers who explode and have 1,400, 1,500, and then the next year, it's like 1,100 or 1,200. It's step back because they're everything goes right sometimes, and B, you become more under the gun from your opponent. They're doing everything they can to find out what your weakness is and out scheme you. So it's going to be difficult for him to replicate everything he did last year, but it doesn't mean he can't add and get better. I certainly think he can.
Mm-hmm. No, with you 1,000%. Ladies and gentlemen, his name is Geoff Mosher. Check out all things Geoff Mosher across all social media platforms. And of course,
Mark? Do you like the eagle in my picture there? And
what is the eagle killing? What is that?
I probably a fox, maybe a coyote. I wasn't sure. I drove by.
A coyote?
Yeah, I live in South Jersey, Mark. You know, we got
it's-
all sorts of animals in here.
We in the burbs, man. We got our own wildlife out back here. And make sure you guys check out all things Inside the Birds as well at InsideTheBirds.com. The entire Inside the Birds empire as well. Next, when's the next episode dropping? When's the next podcast dropping?
We're gonna drop a podcast on Thursday morning.
There you go.
You know, like you said, there's everything on InsideTheBirds.com and our Patreon site's doing well. InsideTheBirds.com, Patreon.com/InsideTheBirds, all that.
Fantastic. Geoff Mosher, always a pleasure, brother. Thanks so much. I'm sure we'll speak to you again down the line.
Yes, sir, my friend. Thank you.
See you, Mosh.